My son gave me two choices: serve his fiancée or leave quietly. I smiled, grabbed my suitcase, and I'm Elnora Chambers, 58 years old, and until recently, I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like. When my husband Robert died, suddenly leaving me to raise our 8-year-old son Jackson alone, I believed nothing could hurt worse. I was wrong. After selling my home to move closer to my only child, Jackson gave me two choices: become his fiancée, Natalie's personal servant, or leave. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from and hit that subscribe button before I tell you about the moment. I smiled, grabbed my suitcase, and changed everything. Life as a single mother wasn't easy, but Jackson made every sacrifice worthwhile. When Robert collapsed from a massive heart attack at 42, our world shattered. Jackson was only 8, still needing his dinosaur nightlight to sleep when we buried his father. I remember his small hand clutching mine at the funeral, looking up with those confused eyes, asking when Daddy was coming home. From that moment, I devoted everything to giving Jackson stability and opportunities. Teaching elementary school wasn't lucrative, but it allowed me to be home when he needed me. My dating life, non-existent. Any potential suitor quickly discovered Jackson came first, always. I turned down weekend trips, declined evening outings when Jackson had school projects, and postponed my own dreams of traveling. Our modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs became our sanctuary. I took on tutoring after school to afford the extras. Jackson needed soccer equipment, science camp tuition, the graphing calculator for advanced math. Some nights I'd grade papers until 2 in the morning, catching just 4 hours of sleep before preparing Jackson's breakfast and starting another day. The sacrifices paid off when Jackson graduated valedictorian. I still have his speech framed where he thanked his superhero mom who worked 2 jobs so I could have one dream. That moment, watching my son shine in his cap and gown, validated every missed opportunity and lonely night. Jackson earned a full scholarship to an Ivy League business school, becoming the first college graduate in our family. During those 4 years, we spoke nearly every day despite the distance. He'd call for cooking advice or to share professor stories. When he landed a prestigious finance position in Boston, I couldn't have been prouder. Our relationship settled into a comfortable routine: Sunday phone calls lasting hours, monthly visits when he'd fly home or I'd visit him. Even as he built his career, Jackson made time for me. He'd show me around Boston, introduce me to his colleagues, take me to fancy restaurants I could never afford on my teacher's salary. 2 years ago, Jackson mentioned a new coworker named Natalie during our Sunday call. His voice changed when he spoke about her impressive market analysis and her wit during meetings. 3 weeks later, he casually mentioned they'd had dinner. By Christmas, I was hearing about Natalie's family traditions and her favorite holiday films. When they visited 6 months later, I was eager to meet the woman making my son so happy. Natalie was striking tall, polished, with the confident handshake of someone who closed million-dollar deals before lunch. She complimented my flower garden and asked thoughtful questions about my teaching career. That weekend, they stayed in Jackson's childhood bedroom. I overheard their whispers and laughter, remembering what young love felt like. Sunday morning, I made my special blueberry pancakes, and Natalie requested the recipe, saying she'd love to make them for Jackson in their apartment. It warmed my heart to see someone wanting to care for my son. Their visits became more frequent over the next year. Natalie always brought a small gift: imported tea, artisanal chocolates, once a beautiful cashmere scarf I could never justify purchasing on my budget. These gestures, along with her interest in Jackson's childhood photos, made me believe she valued family connections. 6 months ago, during their spring visit, Jackson announced they were engaged. He'd proposed at sunset on Boston Harbor with a photographer capturing the moment. Natalie's diamond was stunning, catching light from every angle as she showed me. They planned a December wedding, intimate but elegant. That same weekend, over celebratory champagne, I shared my upcoming retirement plans after 30 years of teaching. The elementary school was throwing a farewell party, students from decades past promising to attend. Jackson and Natalie exchanged glances before he suggested something unexpected. "Mom, why don't you sell the house? It's too big for just you and the maintenance is becoming a burden," he said, Natalie nodding beside him. I'd considered downsizing eventually, but hadn't planned on selling the home where Jackson took his first steps, where Robert and I had built our life. "You could move to Boston. Jackson continued enthusiastically. Stay with us while looking for a condo nearby. We'd love having you closer, right, honey? Natalie smiled warmly. Absolutely, with the wedding planning, having your expertise would be wonderful. Plus, Boston has an amazing retiree community. The idea took root. After 3 decades in the same house, surrounded by memories both joyful and painful, maybe a fresh start made sense. My closest friend Barbara had moved to Arizona, and my sister lived in California. Perhaps it was time to prioritize being near my only child, my future grandchildren. The next months passed in a whirlwind of emotions, saying goodbye to colleagues who'd become family, watching children I'd taught now bringing their own kids to wish me well, sorting through 30 years of accumulated life. Robert's clothes, I'd never fully parted with Jackson's childhood drawings, wedding china, rarely used since becoming a widow. The house sold quickly, well above asking price to a young family with twins. Seeing their excitement mirrored my own from decades earlier. The realtor's commission and sale proceeds combined with my teacher's pension provided a comfortable nest egg for this new chapter. Jackson helped coordinate the move, arranging for a storage unit in Boston for furniture that wouldn't fit in their guest room. He sent daily apartment listings in neighborhoods he thought I'd enjoy. Each call reinforced my decision to move closer to my son and future daughter-in-law. When I arrived at their downtown Boston apartment with 2 suitcases and a box of irreplaceable mementos, they welcomed me warmly. The guest room was prepared with fresh flowers and new linens. That first night, we ordered takeout from an upscale Italian restaurant, laughing over wine as Jackson shared embarrassing stories from work. For 2 wonderful weeks, everything seemed perfect. I explored the neighborhood while they worked preparing dinner as a thank you for their hospitality. Evenings were spent planning wedding details or watching their favorite shows. I felt young again, part of something vibrant and forward-moving after years of stable routine. I believed I was embarking on the best chapter of my life, surrounded by family in a new city full of possibilities. How quickly things would change. The first cracks in my Boston dream appeared subtly, like hairline fractures in fine china. 3 weeks after moving in, I prepared my specialty pot roast, the recipe passed down from Robert's grandmother. It had been Jackson's favorite since childhood, requesting it for every birthday dinner. As we sat down to eat, Natalie took a small bite, her expression tightening almost imperceptibly. This is interesting, Elnora. Though I think we're trying to cut back on red meat, aren't we, Jackson? And this gravy seems quite heavy on sodium. Jackson, who had already taken a hearty second helping, paused mid-bite. Oh, right. Our nutritionist did mention that. I hadn't known they consulted a nutritionist. Jackson had always loved comfort food, especially after stressful work periods. But I smiled and offered to make salmon next time. The following day, returning from a walk, I found Natalie rearranging my toiletries in the bathroom. My facial creams and medications previously organized in a small basket were now lined precisely along one edge of the counter. Hope you don't mind, she said without looking up. The basket was taking up counter space, and this looks cleaner. Before I could respond, she added, Also, Jackson and I prefer using the primary bathroom before 8 a.m., so perhaps you could adjust your schedule. Corporate mornings are so hectic. That night, during my usual evening call with Jackson, Natalie interrupted repeatedly with wedding questions that apparently couldn't wait. After the third interruption, Jackson suggested we continue our conversation tomorrow. We'd never cut short our talks before. Within days, I noticed Jackson's behavior shifting. Our easy conversations became brief exchanges. He avoided eye contact during dinner, focusing intensely on his phone or engaging exclusively with Natalie. When I asked about his work project, he gave one-word answers before Natalie jumped in to explain it for him. One evening, passing their partially open bedroom door, I overheard Natalie's frustrated whisper, Your mother rearranged the spice rack again. I've told her 3 times our system is alphabetical, not categorized by cuisine type. I'll talk to her, Jackson replied tiredly. It's been a month, Jackson. How long is temporary supposed to last? She's not even actively looking at apartments. I stood frozen, my chest tightening. I had been scheduling viewings for the following week. She'll find a place soon, Jackson assured her. Mom's adjusting to big changes, retirement, selling her home. Meanwhile, we have 0 privacy. Did you notice she washed and folded your dress shirts? I specifically told her our dry cleaner handles those. I tiptoed back to my room, confused and hurt. I'd thought helping with laundry was contributing to the household. The shirts had been sitting in the hamper for days. Trying to smooth things over, I increased my household contributions. I deep cleaned the kitchen while they worked, organized the pantry, and prepared elaborate dinners. I started waking at 5:30 to ensure the bathroom was free by 7. When Natalie mentioned preferring organic produce, I found a specialty market 20 minutes away and paid premium prices from my own savings. Yet nothing seemed sufficient. Natalie criticized my cooking techniques in front of Jackson. The vegetables are overcooked again, or this pasta is too al dente for American palates. When I purchased new towels as a thank you gift, Natalie explained they didn't match their bathroom's aesthetic and returned them. Jackson's work hours extended longer. He'd leave before 7 and return after 8, exhausted and distracted. When I tried discussing the growing tension during a rare moment alone, he dismissed my concerns. It's just an adjustment period, Mom. Natalie's under tremendous pressure at work and the wedding planning is stressful. Maybe be more flexible with her preferences. This is her home, after all. Her home. Not their home. Not my temporary home. The distinction stung. The first major confrontation happened 6 weeks after my arrival. I'd kept my cherished family recipe book in the kitchen. A handwritten collection spanning generations. It contained Robert's grandmother's pot roast recipe, my mother's Christmas cookie instructions, comfort foods that defined our family history. Returning from an apartment viewing, I couldn't find it in its usual spot. After searching frantically, I asked Natalie if she'd seen it. Oh, that old binder I cleared out some kitchen clutter during my organization project. It was stained and taking up valuable drawer space. You threw away my family recipe book. My voice shook. Those recipes go back 4 generations. She shrugged. Everything's digital now, Elnora. If you really need a recipe, just use Pinterest like everyone else. When Jackson returned and I explained what happened, his response shattered something inside me. Mom, it was just an old book. Natalie's trying to modernize our space. You need to be more flexible. That night, I cried silently in my room, clutching the photo of Robert I kept on the nightstand. For the first time, I questioned my decision to leave my community, my support system, the home filled with memories, to move closer to a son who suddenly felt like a stranger. By the 2-month mark, Natalie's subtle criticisms transformed into undisguised control. The apartment, though spacious by city standards, became increasingly hostile territory, where I navigated an expanding minefield of rules and restrictions. Elnora, we've created a kitchen schedule, Natalie announced one morning, presenting a printed calendar with color-coded time blocks. You'll have access from 2 to 4 p.m. for meal prep and 7 to 8 a.m. for breakfast. Outside those hours, we'd appreciate you using minimal kitchen equipment. When I pointed out that preparing dinner typically required later kitchen access, Natalie's smile tightened. Perhaps you could meal prep during your afternoon slot. That's what efficient home cooks do. Or you're welcome to eat with us when we order in, though we'd need to calculate your portion for the expense tracking app. The living room became equally restricted territory. Jackson and I need the common areas for client calls and wedding planning most evenings and weekends, Natalie explained. Your bedroom has adequate space for your leisure activities. My leisure activities had dwindled to reading books on my tablet and watching videos with headphones, careful not to disturb their schedule. The vibrant Boston explorations I'd imagined gave way to solitary walks around the neighborhood, killing time until I could return to my increasingly confining bedroom. The power dynamic shifted dramatically when Natalie invited her friends over for brunch. I offered to help prepare food, or at least introduce myself, but Natalie suggested I might be more comfortable staying in my room during their gathering. Through the thin walls, I heard them discussing wedding details. Then, Natalie's voice took on a performative tone of concern. It's challenging having Jackson's mother living with us indefinitely. She's recently retired and struggling with the transition. You know how that generation can't handle change well. Can't you set boundaries? One friend asked. We're trying, but Jackson feels guilty. She sold her house, so there's pressure to let her stay until she finds something. Though, honestly, her apartment search seems perpetually stalled. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a gasp. I'd viewed 12 properties in the past month, but Boston's competitive market and my fixed income made finding suitable housing difficult. Each rejection or unaffordable option felt like personal failure. Jackson, once my staunch defender and confidant, withdrew completely from mediating the growing hostility. When I approached him about Natalie's comments, his response left me cold. "Mom, Natalie's entitled to vent to her friends. This situation is stressful for everyone." "I'm actively searching for apartments, Jackson. I've had 3 applications rejected because of limited availability in my price range." He sighed, checking his watch. "Maybe expand your search radius or consider roommate situations. Lots of seniors share housing now." The suggestion that I, at 58, should live with strangers rather than expect basic courtesy in my son's home until finding suitable housing left me speechless. My attempts to connect with Natalie through shared activities failed repeatedly. When I suggested helping with wedding preparations, mentioning my experience arranging school functions, she declined firmly. "Wedding planning is quite different from organizing elementary school events, Elnora. We've hired professionals who understand current trends." I retreated further, my world shrinking to carefully timed appearances in common areas, when least likely to encounter Natalie's disapproval. I texted Barbara frequently, my oldest friend now living in Arizona, who expressed growing concern. "This doesn't sound healthy, Elnora," she wrote. "Jackson is allowing his fiancée to bully you in what's supposed to be your temporary home. He's caught in the middle." I defended, still unable to accept my son's transformation. The breaking point of this phase came when I returned from an apartment viewing to find my bedside table rearranged. The silver-framed photo of Robert was missing, replaced by a generic decorative box. After searching frantically, I found the frame in the trash glass, cracked diagonally across Robert's smiling face. When confronted, Natalie's explanation chilled me. "I was dusting and it accidentally fell. That silver frame didn't match our home aesthetic anyway, so I thought you'd prefer something more modern. There's a digital frame in the storage closet you could use instead." When Jackson came home, he dismissed the incident despite my obvious distress. "It was just an accident, Mom. Why make this into a federal case? The photo's fine, just get another frame." "The frame was a 20th anniversary gift from your father," I said quietly. Jackson's expression flickered with momentary recognition before hardening again. "That was years ago. Maybe it's time to let go of these old things." That night, I discovered something else disturbing. My jewelry box had been rearranged, items moved from their usual places. Nothing was missing, but someone had clearly searched through my belongings. When I gathered my courage to confront Natalie the next day, her response was both defensive and accusatory. "I was looking for a safety pin and thought you might have one. Why are you so secretive about your things?" This is exactly the kind of paranoid behavior that concerns me about having you here long term. The confrontation escalated until Natalie's eyes welled with strategic tears just as Jackson walked in. Seeing his fiancée crying and his mother standing firm, he immediately took Natalie's side, berating me for attacking her over a simple misunderstanding. As Natalie sobbed dramatically into his shoulder, shooting me a triumphant glance, when Jackson couldn't see, I realized with crushing clarity this situation wasn't just uncomfortable. It was untenable. That night, I called Barbara, my voice breaking as I finally admitted the truth. "I don't recognize my own son anymore. The Jackson I raised would never allow anyone to be treated this way, especially his mother." "You need an exit plan," Barbara said firmly. "This isn't going to improve." I didn't know then how prophetic her words would prove, nor how quickly things would come to a head. The wedding date was set for early December, just 3 months away. As tension in the apartment reached suffocating levels, an important milestone approached. Natalie's parents were flying in from Chicago to have dinner and discuss wedding details. "My parents are quite traditional," Natalie informed me the morning before their arrival. "They'll be staying at the Ritz-Carlton, of course, but they're joining us for dinner tomorrow night. I'd appreciate if you'd wear something appropriate." Her eyes scanned my casual attire with poorly concealed disapproval. "Of course," I responded politely. "I brought my navy dress for special occasions." Natalie's tight smile didn't reach her eyes. "Perfect, and perhaps minimize discussing your apartment hunting struggles. My father is a successful real estate developer, and he finds housing instability rather concerning." I spent the following day deep cleaning the apartment while they worked preparing an elaborate meal of roasted salmon, wild rice, pilaf, and fresh vegetables. I used my teacher's pension money to purchase expensive wine I couldn't afford, desperate to contribute positively to this important family meeting. When Gerald and Patricia Hansen arrived, they were polished and poised like their daughter. Gerald's firm handshake and Patricia's air kiss greeting set the tone for formal pleasantries. As we sat in the living room with pre-dinner drinks, Natalie made introductions. And this is Jackson's mother, Elnora, who's staying with us temporarily while apartment hunting. Not my future mother-in-law, not even Jackson's mom, just a temporary house guest with unstable housing. The introduction stung, but I maintained my warmth, asking about their flight and complimenting Patricia's elegant pearl necklace. Throughout dinner, I was systematically excluded from conversation. When I mentioned Jackson's childhood achievements, Natalie smoothly pivoted to discuss wedding venue options. When I offered to refill wine glasses, Patricia pointedly asked Natalie to do it instead. The message was clear: I was staff, not family. After dessert, Gerald raised his glass in a toast. To Jackson and Natalie, combining not just your lives, but establishing a true power couple dynasty. Your new condominium purchase shows your commitment to building a proper family foundation. I froze mid-sip. Condominium purchase. Jackson hadn't mentioned buying property. Catching my confused expression, Natalie jumped in smoothly. We were saving that announcement for next week, Daddy. But yes, we've purchased a lovely 3-bedroom condo in Beacon Hill. 3 bedrooms? Patricia nodded approvingly. Perfect for a home office and nursery. No mention of space for Jackson's mother, still supposedly looking for housing nearby. The revelation that they'd purchased a new home without mentioning it to me confirmed my growing suspicion there had never been a plan to help me settle near them. My temporary arrangement was merely tolerated until they could move on without me. After the Hansens departed with plans to meet again before returning to Chicago, Natalie's demeanor shifted instantly from gracious hostess to clinical efficiency. While Jackson walked her parents to their waiting town car, she retrieved a folder from her briefcase. Elnora, now that my parents have met you, it's time we formalize our arrangement. She extended a document toward me. This household agreement outlines expectations clearly so there's no further confusion. The 3-page document, professionally formatted with the header, Residential Expectations and Contributions Agreement, detailed what could only be described as servant duties. Section 1 outlined household contributions, including daily cleaning requirements for all common areas, laundry responsibilities for all household members, and meal preparation expectations, 5 days, weekly. Section 2, schedule and access, restricted my use of common areas during evening hours and weekends without prior written notice, required 48-hour advance permission before inviting anyone to the apartment, and established quiet hours that essentially confined me to my bedroom after 8:00 p.m. Section 3, financial considerations, demanded a monthly payment of $800 for utility usage and spatial impact, despite my understanding that my temporary stay involved no financial obligation. Most shocking was Section 4, future arrangements, which outlined expectations for grandmother services, including regularly scheduled childcare, 3 days weekly once they started a family. This seems extensive, I managed to say, my hands trembling. It's actually quite generous, Natalie countered. Many households charge much more for room and board. We're simply establishing clear boundaries that benefit everyone. I understood my stay was temporary while I found my own place, I said carefully. Yes, and this arrangement can continue indefinitely under these terms. Given Boston's competitive housing market and your limited retirement income, this is really your most viable option. Her tone carried the condescending patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. I need to discuss this with Jackson. Of course, Natalie smiled thinly. He's fully aware of the agreement. In fact, it was his suggestion that we formalize expectations. When Jackson returned, his expression confirmed Natalie's claim. He'd known about this document, perhaps even contributed to its creation. The betrayal crushed whatever remaining hope I'd harbored that my son was still somewhere beneath this stranger's facade. Mom, it's a reasonable arrangement, he said, avoiding my eyes. We're providing housing in one of the country's most expensive markets. Contributing to the household is only fair. I've been contributing, I said quietly. I've cooked, cleaned, and used my own money for household expenses while searching for a place within my budget. But you haven't found anywhere, have you? Natalie interjected. And we need structure moving forward, especially with our new property purchase and family planning. Jackson placed his hand over Natalie's, presenting a united front. This is our life now, Mom. You can either accept the household arrangement and be part of it, or what Jackson... My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calmer than I felt. He finally met my gaze. His expression hardened into someone I barely recognized. Or, you need to make other arrangements. Immediately. You're giving me an ultimatum. The word tasted bitter. I'm being realistic. You're a grown woman, Mom. You can't expect to live off us for free. Live off them. After 30 years of sacrificing everything for him, after selling my home at his suggestion, after using my savings to contribute to their household while searching tirelessly for affordable housing, the injustice burned away any remaining confusion. I looked at the contract in my hands, then at my son and his fiancée. Their expectant expressions showed they anticipated my capitulation. They believed I had no choice, no resources, nowhere to go. In that crystallizing moment, I recognized the trap I'd walked into and saw only one dignified way out. I smiled. Not the placating smile they expected, but a genuine smile of clarity and release. Without a word, I placed the unsigned contract on the coffee table, turned, and walked calmly to my bedroom. I could hear their confused murmuring as I pulled out my suitcase and began methodically packing essential items. 10 minutes later, I emerged with my suitcase and purse. Jackson's expression registered genuine shock, as though he'd never actually expected me to choose self-respect over subservience. Mom, don't be dramatic. We can discuss the terms if specific points are concerning you. There's nothing to discuss. My voice remained steady. I won't stay where I'm not wanted or respected. Natalie's smug satisfaction faltered as she realized her power play had backfired. You're overreacting. Where will you even go at this hour? I didn't dignify her question with a response. Instead, I addressed my son directly, looking into the eyes of the boy I'd raised alone, the child for whom I'd sacrificed everything. I hope someday you remember the values I taught you about how to treat people, especially family. Until then, I wish you both well. With that, I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. In the hallway, my composure wavered. By the time I reached my car, tears blurred my vision so severely I had to sit for several minutes before I could safely drive away from the place I'd briefly believed would be my new beginning. I drove through Boston's glittering nightscape, a woman suddenly untethered from everything familiar. With shaking fingers, I dialed Barbara's number, my oldest friend, who'd urged me to see the situation clearly when I couldn't. I need a place to stay, I said, when she answered, my voice finally breaking. I've left Jackson's apartment. Oh, Elnora! Barbara's voice carried through the distance. I was afraid this would happen. You come straight to my sister's place in Cambridge. I'll text you the address. She's out of town, but gave me the key code. I'll book a flight tomorrow. As I navigated toward Cambridge, the full weight of what had happened descended. My only child had chosen his fiancée's control agenda over his relationship with his mother. I'd lost my home, my community, and now my son, all within months. The grief was overwhelming, crushing my chest until each breath became a conscious effort. Barbara's sister's apartment became my first refuge, a place to fall apart completely where no one could see. For 3 days, I barely ate or slept, moving between tears and numb disbelief. Barbara arrived on day 4, her familiar presence the first comfort in this storm. You didn't fail, she assured me, holding my hands as I sobbed. Jackson failed you. Those first days after leaving Jackson's apartment rank among the darkest of my life, rivaled only by the period after Robert died. At least then, I had an 8-year-old who needed me, forcing me to function through grief. This time, the person I'd devoted my life to had discarded me, leaving nothing to anchor me to purpose. Barbara, my saint of a friend for over 30 years, took emergency leave from her part-time library position in Arizona to stay with me at her sister's Cambridge apartment. She found me alternating between prostrating grief and stunned silence, barely functioning enough to shower or eat. I keep replaying every moment. I confessed on our 3rd evening together, picking at the soup she'd practically forced me to try. When did Jackson change so fundamentally? Was it gradual? Did I miss warning signs? Was it entirely Natalie's influence? Barbara's directness had always been her gift. Natalie amplified something that was already there, Elnora. The seeds of entitlement were planted long before she entered the picture. The observation stung, but carried truth I needed to examine. For decades, I'd centered my existence around Jackson's needs and happiness, often at the expense of my own. Had my sacrificial mothering created the expectation that others should naturally accommodate his desires? Had I raised a son who saw relationship value primarily in what others could provide him? My phone showed 7 missed calls and 3 texts from Jackson in the first 2 days, after I left all variations on the theme that I'd overreacted to a reasonable household arrangement and could return if I accepted the established boundaries. Not one message contained an apology or acknowledgement of how hurtful the situation had been. On day 4, when Barbara insisted I eat a proper breakfast, my phone buzzed with another text. "Mom, this silent treatment is childish. Natalie's willing to review the agreement terms if you'll discuss this reasonably." The message crystallized something important. Jackson genuinely couldn't see the fundamental problem. He viewed my departure as a negotiation tactic rather than a necessary act of self-preservation. The realization was simultaneously heartbreaking and clarifying. "I need to stop waiting for an apology that won't come," I told Barbara, setting my phone aside. "He doesn't believe he's done anything wrong." By the end of week 1, I'd stopped checking for messages altogether. Instead, I forced myself to focus on immediate survival needs. Barbara helped me research affordable housing options within commuting distance of Boston, since my teacher's credentials might still secure employment there. "You've got options," she assured me, showing listings for senior apartment complexes in surrounding communities. "Your pension is steady income, you have excellent credit, and your home sale proceeds are still mostly intact." We scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor specializing in retirement planning. Linda Peterson reviewed my finances with pragmatic optimism. "You're actually in better shape than many new retirees," she noted, reviewing my statements. "The house sale gives you a cushion while establishing new housing. The challenge is finding something within your monthly budget that doesn't deplete principal too quickly." Her practical assessment restored some confidence in my future independence. I wasn't destitute or helpless, despite how Jackson and Natalie had made me feel. A surprising opportunity emerged when my former principal called, having heard through mutual connections about my situation. "Our literacy intervention program just lost a teacher to maternity leave," Alice explained. "We need someone part-time through the academic year. The position includes housing in the faculty apartments adjacent to campus. It's small but private, and the stipend would supplement your pension nicely." The offer provided both purpose and immediate housing, though accepting meant leaving Boston despite my original plan to be near Jackson. The decision crystallized an important truth: I'd moved to Boston for a relationship that no longer existed in the form I'd imagined. Staying nearby while being excluded from my son's life would only prolong the pain. 2 weeks after my abrupt departure, Jackson sent a text that revealed the depth of disconnect between us. "Natalie and I would like to have dinner next week to reconcile before wedding invitations go out. She's prepared to explain the household agreement more thoroughly to address your concerns." The message contained no recognition that the problem wasn't my understanding of the agreement, but its very existence and what it represented. The reconciliation offered wasn't apology or changed behavior, but another opportunity to accept subservient status in their home. With Barbara's support, I declined the invitation firmly but politely. "Thank you for the dinner invitation. I'm not ready for that conversation yet and need more time to establish my independence. I wish you both well with wedding preparations." Barbara introduced me to a senior community center in Cambridge, where twice-weekly gatherings provided social connection during this transitional period. There, I met women with similar experiences: Margaret, whose daughter had moved her cross-country, only to marginalize her in favor of a controlling son-in-law; Susan, whose adult children expected regular childcare but minimal input in their children's upbringing; Helen, who'd sold her home to move near grandchildren only to find herself treated like hired help. Their stories helped me recognize patterns beyond my individual situation. We represented a generation of women who'd often sacrificed careers and personal development for family, now finding ourselves vulnerable when those family bonds frayed or conditions changed. The solidarity provided perspective and strength I desperately needed. In late October, I applied for an affordable senior apartment complex in western Massachusetts, attracted by its community programs and proximity to the school where the part-time position awaited. The application process was rigorous, requiring extensive financial documentation and references. The waiting period coincided with the arrival of Jackson and Natalie's wedding invitations. The thick cream envelope arrived at Barbara's sister's address, which I'd provided as my contact information before leaving their apartment. Opening it revealed another painful confirmation of my changed status. The formal invitation listed me simply as Ms. Nonna Chambers among the general guests, not as mother of the groom as tradition would dictate. My seating assignment placed me at a peripheral table with distant acquaintances, not the family table where parents typically sat. The symbolic demotion finalized what I'd already known but struggled to accept in Jackson's new life. I'd been relegated from central figure to uncomfortable obligation. The wedding would cement not just his union with Natalie, but my permanent outsider status in their family structure. As I debated the painful choice of whether to attend a wedding where my presence was clearly an afterthought, fate intervened. The apartment application was approved with move-in available the first weekend of December, exactly when the wedding was scheduled. The scheduling conflict provided an emotionally honest reason to decline the wedding invitation. I sent a card with a modest gift and simple note, "Congratulations on your new life together. I've accepted housing and employment in western Massachusetts beginning your wedding weekend. I'll be thinking of you on your special day. Love, Mom." Jackson's angry voicemail came hours after he must have received my response. "Are you seriously skipping my wedding over this ridiculous fight after everything I've done for you? This is childish and embarrassing, Mom. Fix it." His words revealed volumes. My absence wasn't emotionally significant to him, but socially embarrassing. The fight wasn't about his betrayal of our relationship, but my refusal to accept mistreatment. Most tellingly, he believed he'd done everything for me, rather than recognizing my lifetime of sacrifice. For the first time, I felt no obligation to call back immediately and smooth things over. Instead, I focused on preparing for my move to the small apartment that represented not defeat, but the beginning of genuine independence. Moving day arrived with crisp December air and pale winter sunlight. Barbara had extended her stay through this transition, her unwavering support a lifeline during the preceding months. Together, we loaded my remaining possessions, what little I'd taken from Jackson's apartment plus necessary items purchased since, into her sister's station wagon for the drive to western Massachusetts. The senior apartment complex surprised me pleasantly. Though modest at 600 square feet, the one-bedroom unit featured large windows overlooking a community garden, currently dormant under light snow but promising spring renewal. The building housed primarily retired teachers, healthcare workers, and civil servants, creating an immediate sense of community with shared backgrounds. "This is perfect for now," Barbara assured me, helping arrange my few pieces of furniture. We'd visited secondhand shops and budget home stores to acquire essentials: a comfortable armchair, simple dining set, practical kitchenware. My teacher's instinct for creating warm environments with limited resources served me well. The wall opposite my bed became a personal gallery, displaying photographs salvaged from storage Robert in his 30s, handsome and laughing by our first Christmas tree, Jackson's graduation, the elementary school staff who'd been my second family for decades. These visual anchors reminded me of the richness of my life beyond recent painful chapters. Barbara helped establish small rituals in my new space: morning coffee by the eastern window, evening reading in the armchair positioned to catch the last daylight. These routines would sustain me after she returned to Arizona the following week. "Promise you'll call daily," she insisted while preparing to leave, "and use the community center. Isolation feeds depression." I honored both promises, discovering that the complex's active social calendar offered daily opportunities for connection. Morning walking groups, afternoon book discussions, evening game nights, structured activities that prevented withdrawal during a season when darkness and cold naturally encouraged hibernation. The part-time tutoring position provided not just supplemental income, but purpose. 3 mornings weekly, I worked with struggling readers applying decades of experience to help children decode words and discover story magic. Their unguarded enthusiasm and visible progress nourished my teacher's heart in ways I hadn't realized I'd missed during early retirement. While establishing this new life, I maintained deliberate distance from news of Jackson and Natalie's wedding. Through mutual connections, I learned it proceeded as planned, an elegant December ceremony at an exclusive Boston venue. Social media photos, viewed briefly, then muted, showed Jackson beaming beside Natalie in designer white, her parents proudly flanking the couple, while my absence created conspicuous asymmetry in family photographs. Christmas approached my first holiday season alone since Robert died. Barbara invited me to Arizona, but the airfare exceeded my careful budget. Instead, I accepted an invitation to join 3 other residents without family plans for dinner in the complex's community room. We each contributed a dish, shared stories of holidays past, and exchanged small, thoughtful gifts. The day held moments of melancholy, but also unexpected joy and new connections. January brought heavy snow and a text from Jackson, the first communication since his angry voicemail about my wedding absence. Natalie and I are expecting. Due July. Thought you should know. No warm announcement, no invitation to participate in this life milestone, just clinical information delivery. After careful consideration, I responded with measured warmth. Congratulations to you both. This is wonderful news. I'd love to be involved in my grandchild's life when you're comfortable with that possibility. Wishing Natalie a healthy pregnancy. His response came days later. We'll see how things develop. You know where we stand regarding expectations. The conditional acceptance of my grandparent role stung deeply, yet I recognized progress in even this limited opening. I focused on building my independent life rather than fixating on conditions I couldn't control. February brought an unexpected development in the form of Walter Jensen, a 72-year-old widower whose apartment faced the community garden opposite mine. We'd exchanged pleasantries during community events, but when we discovered shared interest in birdwatching, our conversations deepened. Walter, retired from university administration, possessed gentle humor and thoughtful perspective, gained through his own life challenges. His wife of 40 years had died from cancer 3 years earlier, and his adult children lived internationally, making video calls but rarely visiting. Grief changes shape but never truly leaves, he observed during one of our garden bench conversations watching cardinals bright against snow. Eventually, it becomes less a daily weight and more a familiar companion that walks beside you. Our friendship developed naturally, beginning with shared meals in the community dining room, progressing to occasional restaurant outings. Walter's intellectual curiosity and emotional intelligence provided conversation beyond superficial pleasantries. For the first time since Robert's death, I found myself enjoying male companionship without guilt or comparison. As winter softened into early spring, an unexpected visitor disrupted my carefully constructed new existence. Returning from tutoring one afternoon, I found Jackson waiting outside my apartment door, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "Mom," he said simply, standing awkwardly in the narrow hallway. "This is a surprise," I managed, unlocking my door and gesturing him inside. The apartment, though small, had become distinctly mine with touches, reflecting my personality rather than accommodating others' preferences. Jackson surveyed the space, seeming surprised by its coziness and the evidence of my settled independence. "You look good," he offered after the silence stretched uncomfortably. "Healthy." "I am. The tutoring position keeps me active, and there's a good community here." I prepared tea, the familiar routine providing momentary shelter from emotional turbulence. Jackson accepted the cup, perching on my secondhand sofa. "Natalie's showing now, almost 5 months along." "That's wonderful." I maintained careful neutrality, uncertain of his purpose in this unexpected visit. After more strained small talk, Jackson finally addressed the obvious question. "You're probably wondering why I came." "I am curious," I acknowledged. "Natalie's due in July. A boy." He stared into his teacup, then met my eyes directly. "Your grandson." The statement hung between us, simultaneously joyful and complicated. "We need to fix this situation," he continued. "My son should know his grandmother." "I agree completely," I said carefully. "I'd love to be involved in your child's life. Then you'll need to make things right with Natalie." His familiar problem-solving tone emerged. She's willing to move past the wedding absence if you apologize and commit to regular visits under appropriate parameters. The conditional terms revealed nothing had fundamentally changed. What parameters would those be? Reasonable expectations. Respecting our parenting decisions. Contributing appropriately when visiting. Contributing practical help. Natalie will be returning to work after 3 months. Having you available for childcare would be valuable. His tone suggested this arrangement primarily benefited me rather than them. I see. I set my teacup down carefully. Jackson, I'd love to be your son's grandmother, but not as an unpaid nanny under specific behavioral conditions. Grandparenting is a relationship, not a service position. His expression hardened, revealing familiar disappointment. Why must everything be so difficult with you lately? You're being offered a chance to be part of our family. I've always been part of this family. I'm your mother. That relationship shouldn't require conditions or contracts. This is the real world, Mom. Everyone has expectations and boundaries. Boundaries are healthy, I agreed. But what you've described are obligations, not boundaries. I won't accept conditional love or access to my grandson based on utility. Jackson stood, frustration evident. This is why we couldn't live together. You refuse to adapt to changing circumstances. I have adapted more than you know, I said quietly. I've built an entire new life since leaving your apartment. What I won't adapt to is disrespect or exploitation. Exploitation? His voice raised indignantly. We offered you a place to live, with the expectation that I'd become a household servant and eventual unpaid childcare provider. That's family helping family. No, I countered calmly. That's taking advantage of someone's limited options and emotional connection. There's a difference between mutual support and one-sided expectation. Jackson paced the small living area, frustration radiating from his rigid posture. So, what are you saying? You won't be involved with your grandson unless everything happens on your terms. I'm saying I'll happily be involved as a loving grandmother who respects your parenting decisions, visits appropriately, and occasionally helps as grandparents naturally do, but not as a contractual service provider whose access depends on meeting specific obligations. He stared at me, genuinely perplexed by this boundary. I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. I know you don't, I said sadly. That's the heart of our problem. Jackson left shortly after promising to discuss options with Natalie and contact me with their decision. The phrasing revealed everything about how they viewed family relationships, negotiable arrangements rather than unconditional bonds. Watching him drive away, I felt a strange combination of grief and strength. I mourned the son who couldn't recognize his mother's inherent value beyond practical usefulness, yet I stood firm in newfound self-respect that wouldn't accept conditional love as sufficient. I walked to the community garden, finding Walter tending early spring seedlings in the shared greenhouse. Family visit, he inquired gently, noting my distracted expression. My son. First time since I left Boston. Walter nodded, continuing his methodical care of tiny green sprouts. Family reconciliations are rarely smooth. Plants are simpler. They just need consistent attention and appropriate boundaries. I smiled at the metaphor. Some relationships could benefit from gardening wisdom. Indeed, Walter agreed, offering me seedlings to transplant alongside his. The best relationships, like the strongest plants, have both deep roots and room to grow. Working beside him in comfortable silence, I found unexpected peace after emotional turbulence. Whatever developed with Jackson and my future grandson, I'd established my own roots in this new life. I could extend branches toward family connection without compromising my essential stability. 6 months into my new life, spring fully blossomed both literally and metaphorically. The community garden outside my window transformed from winter dormancy to vibrant growth, mirroring my own evolution from grief-stricken displacement to genuine thriving. My tutoring position expanded to nearly full-time as word spread about the miracle worker helping struggling readers. The school principal offered a contract for the following academic year with increased hours and compensation. Financial stability combined with purposeful work created foundation for confidence I hadn't felt since before retirement. The community apartment complex became true home rather than temporary refuge. My neighbors transitioned from acquaintances to friends, particularly Walter, whose companionship deepened beyond casual friendship. Though neither of us rushed to define our relationship, our daily garden walks and frequent shared meals created comforting rhythm. His gentle humor and thoughtful insights provided intellectual and emotional connection I deeply missed. One Wednesday afternoon, returning from school, I discovered an unexpected email from Jackson in my inbox. The formal tone immediately signaled something significant had shifted. "Dear Mom, I'm writing because saying this in person seems too difficult right now. The past several months have given me time to reflect on what happened between us, and I've come to recognize some uncomfortable truths about my behavior and choices. Natalie and I have been experiencing increasing conflicts, particularly around her treatment of my friends and colleagues. Recently, she presented my college roommate and his wife with a similar household expectations document when they planned to visit for a weekend. Their shocked response and immediate cancellation forced me to see the situation from an outside perspective. I've begun to recognize patterns of control and isolation that I allowed and enabled. Looking back at how I permitted and defended your mistreatment has become painful to acknowledge. While I'm working through these relationship challenges with Natalie, I wanted to reach out and say what I should have. Months ago, I am deeply sorry for how I treated you, Mom. You deserved better from your son. If you're willing to talk, I would appreciate the opportunity to apologize properly in person. Love, Jackson." The message left me breathless, simultaneously validated and heartsick. The apology I'd stopped expecting had finally arrived, but, prompted by Jackson experiencing similar treatment extended to others rather than simple recognition of my inherent worth. Still, acknowledgement represented significant growth regardless of catalyst. After careful consideration and conversation with Walter, who provided balanced perspective without imposing his views, I responded with cautious openness. "Dear Jackson, thank you for your email and apology, which mean a great deal to me. I would welcome the opportunity to talk when you feel ready. Perhaps we could meet halfway between our locations for coffee next weekend. Let me know what might work for you. Whatever challenges you're facing in your marriage, I hope you'll seek appropriate support through counseling. Relationship patterns can be difficult to navigate alone. With love, Mom." We arranged to meet at a cafe equidistant between our homes the following Saturday. Driving there, I managed my expectations carefully. This meeting represented potential healing, but wouldn't instantly restore what had been broken. Sustainable reconciliation would require consistent changed behavior, not just momentary remorse. Jackson arrived looking simultaneously more mature and more vulnerable than I remembered. Dark circles beneath his eyes suggested ongoing stress, but he greeted me with genuine warmth that had been absent during our previous encounter. "Thank you for meeting me," he began after we settled with coffee. "I've practiced what to say, but everything seems inadequate now." "Just speak honestly," I encouraged. "That's always the best beginning." He nodded, gathering thoughts. "I've been seeing a therapist since February. Initially because of marriage difficulties, but increasingly to understand my own behaviors and patterns." "That takes courage," I acknowledged. "One session focused extensively on what happened with you. When I described the household agreement objectively as my therapist requested, I was forced to confront how truly horrible it was." His voice cracked slightly. "I defended and enabled your mistreatment by someone who should have shown you respect as my mother, if nothing else. What do you think allowed that to happen?" I asked gently, genuinely curious about his perspective rather than seeking additional apology. Jackson considered thoughtfully before responding evidence of his therapeutic work. "I prioritized avoiding conflict with Natalie over everything, including basic decency toward you. That stemmed partly from conflict avoidance patterns I've always had, but also from entitled expectations." He met my eyes directly. "You always accommodated my needs, adjusted your life around mine. I grew to expect others would naturally reorganize around what I wanted." The self-awareness surprised and moved me. "That's insightful, Jackson. My therapist suggested Natalie recognized and exploited that pattern, but I was already primed to expect it because—" He hesitated. "Because you sacrificed so much for me growing up. I took that for granted." The observation contained uncomfortable truth about my own role in our dysfunctional dynamic. My single-minded devotion to Jackson's needs had indeed established unhealthy expectations. While this didn't excuse his behavior, it provided context that helped me understand rather than simply blame. We both have patterns to examine, I acknowledged. My identity became so wrapped up in mothering that I sometimes forgot to maintain healthy boundaries. Our conversation continued for hours, moving beyond recrimination toward genuine understanding. Jackson shared more about his marriage difficulties, including Natalie's increasing attempts to isolate him from friends and extended family. I offered perspective without criticism, encouraging professional support rather than attempting to influence his marital decisions. As our meeting concluded, Jackson asked hesitantly, "Would you consider visiting sometime to see where I work now and maybe discuss plans regarding the baby?" "I'd like that," I replied honestly. "Though I want to be clear about something important. I'd love to be involved in my grandson's life, but my role needs to be as a loving grandmother, not contracted childcare provider. That distinction matters greatly to me." Jackson nodded solemnly. "I understand now why that matters, and I respect it." Those words, simple yet profound, marked genuine turning point in our healing process. Respect, rather than obligation or utility, formed the only foundation on which we could rebuild healthy relationship. 3 weeks later, I visited Jackson at his office, followed by lunch, where he proudly showed ultrasound images of my developing grandson. We discussed names they were considering Thomas, after Natalie's grandfather nursery plans, and Jackson's mixed emotions about impending fatherhood. Natalie remained conspicuously absent from these reconnection efforts. Jackson acknowledged she felt uncomfortable with our reconciliation, but had grudgingly accepted it as requirement for maintaining family peace during pregnancy. I recognized the temporary truce for what it was, but appreciated Jackson's newfound willingness to maintain appropriate boundaries despite her resistance. In early July, I received Jackson's middle-of-the-night call announcing Thomas Robert Chambers had arrived healthy at 7 pounds 9 ounces. The middle name, my late husband's, brought tears of surprised gratitude. Despite Natalie's previous attempts to erase family connections, Jackson had honored his father in his son's name. The hospital visit 2 days later presented predictable challenges. Natalie maintained cool civility, her postpartum vulnerability perhaps tempering what might otherwise have been outright hostility. When she slept, Jackson placed tiny Thomas in my arms, the weight of my grandson against my heart, healing something profound within me. "He has your chin," I whispered, tracing the perfect miniature features with gentle fingertip. "And Dad's eyebrows," Jackson noted. "See how they arch the same way." The shared observation of family continuity represented more than physical resemblance. It acknowledged our connected history and future, regardless of past ruptures. Over subsequent months, my relationship with Jackson slowly rebuilt on healthier foundation. I visited monthly, staying at nearby hotels rather than their home to maintain comfortable boundaries. Jackson occasionally brought Thomas to my apartment for afternoon visits, giving Natalie personal time, while allowing me uninterrupted bonding with my grandson. Walter, now acknowledged partner in my life, provided steady support through this evolving family dynamic. His wisdom from navigating his own complex family relationships offered perspective without judgment. When Jackson eventually met him during a visit, their comfortable conversation about baseball and finance helped Jackson see me as whole person with life beyond motherhood, a perspective shift that benefited our healing relationship. By Thomas's 6-month milestone, tentative family dinner included all parties, Jackson and Natalie, baby, Thomas Walter, and myself. Though conversation remained somewhat stilted, Natalie's recognition of my importance to Jackson and Thomas had evolved from resentful tolerance to grudging acceptance. Small victory, perhaps, but significant progress from where we'd begun. As autumn painted Massachusetts in brilliant color, I sat rocking Thomas in my apartment while Walter prepared tea. My grandson, drowsy from afternoon outing, nestled against my shoulder with perfect trust, watching sunlight play through golden leaves outside my window. I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. 12 months earlier, I'd stood in my son's apartment, confronted with servant contract and ultimatum. The devastation of that moment had seemed unsurvivable, the future unimaginably bleak. Yet that breaking point had forced necessary transformation. Walking away with dignity that night, choosing self respect over accommodation, had initiated painful but essential growth. From temporary housing and emotional collapse, I'd built genuine independence, fulfilling work, meaningful community, unexpected partnership, and healthier family relationships. The journey from breakdown to breakthrough hadn't followed expected path, but had ultimately led to authentic wholeness I might never have discovered otherwise. Thomas stirred against my shoulder, tiny hand clutching my sweater. Walter approached with gentle smile, setting teacups nearby before touching grandson's downy head with grandfatherly affection. This moment, peaceful, genuine, freely chosen, represented everything the servant contract had denied: dignity, agency, reciprocal respect, and love given without extraction. Sometimes, life's most precious gifts arrive disguised as devastating losses. Sometimes the best response to impossible choices is creating entirely different option. And sometimes, standing at the precipice of someone else's ultimatum, the bravest action is simply smiling, grabbing your suitcase, and walking toward uncertain future with unshakable self-respect. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace or keeping your dignity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and self-discovery. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's simply choosing a different path forward. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.